Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be taking a look ahead at the World Cup in Namur with our own power rankings, Issam's Mud Mountain and Noah's 9. And we will also be taking a look ahead at the American National Championship Cyclocross. That part will be audio only and recorded with our North American Cyclocross correspondent Patrick La Patina. But before we get there, let's focus on the big racing, the World Cup in Namur. Issam, thank you for being here.
I was afraid you were not going to introduce me. Thank you for having me.
I would never forget to introduce you, Issam. What would we be without you here on the podcast? I don't know if you can hear that sound, but to me it's the sound coming in from the background. The shark from Jaws, the dinosaur, the T-Rex behind the golf cart in Jurassic Park. It's Mathieu van der Poel entering the season. It's the tune of Remains. He's here, Issam. Are you excited?
Yes, I think in a way, of course, it's a big name. He's a great champion, and of course, it is exciting to have such a name back in the field. On the other hand, of course, you're kind of hoping for some competitive, rivals that could fight him in certain races, and there is always, of course, this. We always are somewhat afraid that it could end up in a way that we will see Van der Poel dominating yet another season, and if you are realistic, that could well be the case again this year. But there's just something that you kind of hope that there will be a battle, or there will be at least some battle in some form in some of the races that he will be attending, and racing. So. Yeah, I think in a way definitely exciting, no matter how it's going to end up. For sure, I'm excited to see him back in the field because it's an incredible champion, as I said, but there's always something in me that might want it to be a little bit more competitive from the others and wants to see a bit more racing for victory instead of, boring solos.
You're saying there's not going to be any suspense. I know for sure in Belgium they are disagreeing about that. It's just a matter of time before Van Aert comes. But we'll discuss the comeback of Van Aert extensively when that's there. That will be next week when we'll be discussing that just before the Christmas period. Let's take a look at your Mud Mountain, and we will start the leader for that first.
Mud Mountain.
Last week, only one race in Sardinia, Terrabla, and many riders weren't there. Probably half of your Mud Mountain was enjoying the Spanish sun, Issam, so not that much point in going through it because there's barely any changes. So we'll just put the Mud Mountain on the screen right now, and you can just talk us through a little bit what the global situation is and what change you did make.
As you can see, there hasn't been much of a change because it was a tricky weekend yet again in Terrabla in Italy, and we got an atypical course somewhat. We missed certain riders, and it feels like we are building up to this new phase, which is coming up with, kicking off with Namur. And then from there on, we go, of course, to several World Cups and other important races in the Christmas period. And that is, from there on, it's definitely going to be much easier to dissect through the riders that we have and really have a right order. So for now, no big changes. The biggest change, or at least the change that we have made, that I have made, is that we put Ryan Kamp back in the order of the tier. I think that he definitely deserves to be back on the Mud Mountain. And we had to sacrifice Joran Viseur for it because at this point, I have no explanation for it, to be honest. It's every time he ends up in a bad situation, the form doesn't seem to be great. And it's, at the moment, I cannot really say anything else than it's just a very big disappointment so far that he has, the performances that he has shown and the results that he has put together. And I don't know if I can be that critical of what he has been doing so far, but I feel that it is definitely, it's almost inexplainable. There has to be a reason. You want to know what the reason is. You want to, at least if there is a reason, you can somewhat understand it. But at this point, there isn't really one, and he makes, also some silly mistakes. It can happen. You can have a bad race or two, but it is now, it's almost a constant factor that we see in his races, and you just hope that it will get better. But at the moment, I feel that you have to reward someone like Kamp that is not has had some very good races on courses that suit him also very well. We have to wait and see how that will be on courses that suit him less well. But we have seen so far that when he comes to those courses as well, he can he can handle his own quite well. And I think that is also something that you need, I guess. And I hope that with that he can stay on this mud mountain a little longer. But it is going to get busy because there are definitely some names that will be added after the race in Namur. And yeah, it's gonna be we're gonna be shuffling here in the coming weeks, and definitely next week will be a big shuffle for sure. And from there on, it will just be it will be very interesting to see how. It will be very interesting, I guess, to see like a side by side of what we are having right now and what we will have after the Christmas period, because I think it will be upside down. I think there will be big changes. Some guys that will be moving up, and some that will be maybe even out of this. That will be removed from this mud mountain. So I think some exciting. If you ask me about Van der Poel, if I'm excited about his return, yeah, for sure. But I think I'm more excited about how this will be shuffled, and how the cards will play out in this Christmas period, because I think that is going to be very interesting as well.
So, lots of changes means lots of editing for me in the editing booth next week, and I know you're always of the Mud Mountain, like you place them in once they've raced, so that was the case for Aerts. He wasn't on there the first week he came in after his win in Ardoi, and it will be the same for Van der Poel and for Del Grosso. This weekend, obviously, the favorite should be Mathieu Van der Poel here in Namur. Let me explain that a bit, because I have said here a number of times, if they're going to beat him anywhere, it's Namur, and I just want to explain more what I mean with that. So, I have no reason to doubt that Mathieu Van der Poel is going to be the outright favorite for every single race he starts this season. The last time he lost a race is also the last time Lucinda Brandt didn't stand on a podium of a cyclocross race. Nearly 2 years ago, Benidorm. Sure, his campaign last year wasn't that big, but still, like, the last time, like, he's lost one race since Benidorm 2023. That in this year Benidorm will be 3 years ago. That's impressive. He wins most races in dominant fashion. I have zero reason to believe that this season will be any different. He's shown his physical ability. He found like this groove that also works with performing in the spring classics on the road. I see no reason why Van Aert would be in any better form than the last 2 years. So for me, the outright favorite this season and also this weekend. However, why am I still adding these little nuances like if anywhere here? Well, because it's his first race. We know historically the first race of Van der Poel, especially if it's a little bit technical, not necessarily the best performance of the year from him. He hasn't raced in Namur a long time. I think that does play a role. He's maybe not as confident on this course. And above all, I think Nys and Mason, the two men who we've seen in tremendous form, will find a course that suits them very well here in Namur. Whereas for Van der Poel, historically, Namur has not been the best course. He, at his last time here, was in a big battle, barely beat Van Aert for the win. Pidcock was in that fight a long time and probably would have won if he was smart enough to take a bike change there, at least once. The year before, Toon Aert should have won that race, but he threw away a 25-second lead with 20 minutes to go and then got put under pressure and crashed. There were other years in which he here also was under pressure. Still, I see no reason to see this as a major weakness. I'm saying maybe there is a 7% chance that they beat him here. And in other races, that chance is maybe 3%. But that's what I mean. Like, if anywhere, for me, it almost has to be here. Because on courses like Antwerp, Kokzijde, Mol, Hofstade, Zolder, like all these fast courses, Loenhout, there's even less to grasp at. For that, I couldn't give you a single reason other than a mechanical, a super bad day, or a illness, something like of that order that would beat him. Whereas here, there are these little small notches that I could bring up as an argument, like, this is like how they could have something to grasp at. But again, I am fully acknowledging it will be very difficult, and I have no doubt that next week when we're sitting here recording, Mathieu Van der Poel on the Mud Mountain, and I get to redo all the tiers below.
Yeah, there will be a lot of editing for sure, but we save that for next week. But I feel I tend to agree because I feel definitely that, you cannot deny that Van der Poel is going to be the main favorite going into that race. And this is maybe not his best course, which is kind of weird to say, but if you kind of look in the way he won, his races here, he has won 5 actually in the elite category. There were some fierce battles, and it was, if you compare it to maybe other races in the season, it was maybe a bit closer than it normally should have been. I feel that he is also a rider that has developed throughout the years, and that's the sort of evolvement that he has been going through from the rider that we kind of knew a couple of years ago and the Van der Poel that we have now, that could maybe play a role as well, and that could maybe make from this course, which is not really his best course, could maybe even play more in his cards, because he is a rider that he's the power output that he has is incredible. You could argue that technically he was maybe better a couple of years ago compared to what he is now, but he's still an amazing bike handler for sure. Let's not have any doubts about that. And it is just very tricky to say if there is going to be a scenario in which he can lose. I mean, there is obviously all the bad luck and crashes and all that, mechanicals and all that could play a role in a potential loss for Van der Poel, but I think that it's gonna be a very tough job for the others to make it difficult for him. And I think they also removed somewhat the doubt of thinking that he would maybe come into this race with a form which isn't all too best, because if his form wasn't great, he wouldn't be great. If his form wasn't good, he wouldn't be starting here, because they had the option, or at least they gave themselves the option, that if the form is not good, that they wouldn't be starting here and they would be starting in Antwerpen. So the form is probably going to be good, or good enough to win. Could it be a battle? Maybe. But I think a lot is also up to him. If he has a good start, he is at the front, first time going over, on the coupled climb, it might already be goodbye. And then the race could already be ridden at that point. And I think, to be honest, that if he is able to get to the front there, it could well be over. But it depends. It depends on a couple of factors. It depends on his start. It depends on how he gets through the first lap. It depends on if there is anything unfortunate happening to him. And it happens and it also depends kind of on the form of the others. If we are looking realistically to the other riders that maybe could challenge him in a way, Nijs is obviously a name that is mentioned a lot currently. But who knows what how is the race of Nijs gonna be? It could very well be that he misses out on his start in the first lap, is not really there. Van der Poel might have a good start, and then the connection is already lost before we even start to think about anything close to a battle. So it's funny, because I had this discussion actually with my brother, and we were talking about it, and I was like, yeah, maybe Van der Poel, you don't know how this is gonna play out, and so, and he was like, you say this every year we have the same story, every year we are talking about Van der Poel. Oh yeah, well, potentially, there could be a battle, we could maybe see something, and then it's the first race, and and it happens. It happens in a way that you kind of know it will happen, and afterwards you say, well, yeah, it is definitely predictable, or we could have expected that. But beforehand, there is always the doubt, there are always the question marks, and that is somewhat the belief that certain riders also have to have if they want to challenge him. They should not be afraid of him. They should not focus their race entirely on him. But they should just try their best, and if there is a chance for a battle, they should just take it. And you never know, because if you are able to stick around in his wheel, for a longer period of time, you may blow up, but you may also secure second place and even fight for first. So I hope that the riders will also bring up that challenge, and I hope that we have a fight, because I don't want to look at a race where he is just riding away halfway through the race, and it's just it's a solo, and it's been 2.5 minutes, and then we have to start talking about, glazing him over the fact that he departed halfway through the first lap, and that he had already 30 seconds by the first start finish crossing, and I don't want to see that. I hope really that we have a battle, or at least he makes it somewhat exciting, and we have a race up until maybe halfway, and then he can do what he wants, and we'll see what happens. But it could go several ways, but we just know that there is one main scenario that will probably be the right one, and that's him winning, and by a comfortable margin.
So you don't want to repeat the Zonhoven podcast from last year, which was exactly that.
No.
And I can get why, and I would still bring in like the counter argument. Like for the last couple of years, I feel like we have been very vocal on like it's hard to challenge him. Almost nobody will be able to do it. We certainly didn't buy into the Iserbyt van Toerenhout narrative. I feel this year more than any of the last 5 years I've bought into that, even more so than the year that Van Aert actually posed a threat. But with Van der Poel, everything is relative. When there's a weak course for him, he's still normally a cut above the rest. You really need very, very specific type of courses. It's almost like the scene from the Fight Club movie, which I'm probably not supposed to talk about according to the rules of Fight Club, but with Insomnia, everything seems like a copy of a copy. You met me at a very weird time in my life. We lost cabin pressure. Like, that's almost how it feels like with Van der Poel. All the race scenarios are the same. He just rolls away super early and then takes the win, and it doesn't matter like if it's in Besançon coming in from a private jet or if it's elsewhere just coming in with his Lambo. He's typically up there winning in similar fashion. And you mentioned earlier something about development, and I would like to briefly touch upon that before we talk about the challengers, because the development, I looked back at some old races this week on the trainer. 2019 Namur, 2020 Namur, watch them. Modern classics, never gets boring to watch those two races. And especially from, I think, the best Van der Poel we saw in cyclocross, from a cyclocross perspective, 2018 until 2020, like the cross ability that he had back then, that he demonstrated, that was impressive. Like the longevity of those seasons, going nearly undefeated, that was something truly special. Now, I would argue that Van der Poel is much stronger. Look at the physical difference. He's become a lot more muscular. His shoulders are wider. His legs are massive. The baby part of his face, which he still had, especially racing with that casquette, it's gone. Like, he's become a grown man. He's become a fully matured cyclist. And that also shows, like, physically he's so much stronger than he was back then. He isn't even peaking, and he's winning with larger margins against arguably better competition as well. So he's really progressed in that way. And yes, this is probably still not the best course for him, but he's improved so much on these courses and these efforts from the road that it will be very hard to beat him. I will stay with that. My prediction would also be a win for Van der Poel. But if somebody needs to pose a challenge, I think Thibaut Nys has to be the man to do this. How? He needs to get a good start. He needs to take advantage of the weaker starting position of Van der Poel. Open up a gap in the first 10-15 minutes of the race. It won't ever be a big gap, but take that 20-second buffer you can get over Van der Poel, who's in traffic. Power away. Van der Poel will catch him, and then probably with 35 or 40 minutes into the race, maybe 15 to go, Van der Poel will place an attack and you will normally disappear into the distance. But if you're nice, this is the only way I think you can do it. You cannot wait for Van der Poel and just sit in the wheel. Mason, similarly, he would need to get a good start and power away. Also a very good course for Mason, this. But for both of them, like, if they don't really get a good start, Van der Poel moves up, they sit in the wheel, then I think it's going to be a very difficult task. It's going to be an uphill battle for them, and it's going to be near enough impossible to win. For me, it would have to come from these two riders. Van Toerenhout, yes, he won in Sardinia. I think he could be a dangerous factor on this course. I'm not looking as much to Nieuwenhuis-Zweek and Van der Putte. All of them have shown some good form in recent weeks, but on this climbing course, I think they will suffer. And maybe we should look more at Emil Verstringen, but that is a long shot. He hasn't been exactly the same rider we saw earlier this season. He's been to Spain, and honestly, being to Spain is also the risk that I would like to add about Thibaut Nys. He's normally not the best coming in cold. He needs that race rhythm. He needs that prolonged period of race after race after race after race, and he hasn't had that. So that's why I think if I'm going to be somewhat like cautious about Van der Poel, I should also mention that about Nys. But if I'm looking at riders, it's those. Issam, I don't know if you have anybody else to add.
I think I fully agree with that. I mean, it's good starts, and Cameron Mason is definitely a tricky subject, I guess. So I hope, I definitely think that if there is any chance in his career of trying to, obviously we don't know how Van der Poel will continue to grow and worsen. I hope that will be the case at some point in his career. But I think that this is a very good chance of challenging him. I think that I would almost say this is the moment for Mason, and he gets a course potentially dry, but definitely a course that normally should play well in his cards. And if that is the case, he should just go for it. And I agree. I think that you should not have a complete go all out crazy, have a crazy start and blow up. I mean, that you will not gain anything from that. It has to be a controlled way of trying to force something in the first, in the opening laps. And if you do that, you don't know what is going to happen. He might have been stuck a little bit in traffic, but you also know that the riders also, when they see Van der Poel coming through, it's going to be like, oh, here, go through on the inside, go around here on the outside, and he will force his way as well. It's not only going to be a give or take kind of thing, but it's when they see him, they know there is no point in the only Kamp might actually try and challenge Van der Poel in a way, but overall they know what is bound to happen, and they will not be so much in his way, I guess. So they're all just like these tiny factors that could play a major role in the race. And I think that what you pointed out about Nice is definitely something to take into consideration when we even talking about him for this race, because as you said, he has quite a bad reputation, to be honest, of coming back from a training camp and being immediately up there. It's quite the opposite. So yeah, that you have to take that into consideration. He can maybe change it up now and actually be 100%. And I just hope that will be the case, because it will be dull. And I think one name that we will probably mention as well is Del Grosso. I think that we saw him last year, was a very strong race. He had a very strong race here in Namur, and we talked about him as well during that episode from last year. And I think normally this year he is going to be a rider normally. If his form is good, and it should normally also be all right, he should also be a rider that could find his way in a top 5 maybe. And if that is the case, he's a tactical rider as well, so he kind of knows what his limits are normally. So he will pace himself, as we have seen in previous years. He will normally pace himself well throughout the race. You don't know where that will end up. I'm not saying that he's going to challenge Van der Poel, but I think that he is, in my opinion, if a Mason, a Nice, a Van Torenhout are not showing up, he potentially even someone that could play a role for a podium. I think that is not even an outrageous shout.
Definitely not. I mean, the whole reason I didn't mention him yet is because I wanted to introduce him now, but you already did a good job of that. Two-time under-23 world champion, flamboyant. The Belgian newspapers were writing headlines this week, and I will read it to you because I wrote it down. Brothers Roodhoofd sent their Dutch sons to the trenches, ready to fight the Belgians. So,
treason.
They are definitely... if there were any riders lining up with white pants, they definitely became brown from reading that headline. Del Grosso, I think, very much a contender for the podium here. He last year already showed great things in the elite and U23 category, that race in Diegem. This is a guy who grows into the race. He's so nonchalant in the wheel, super strong. He is very powerful, but also technically skilled. I'm going to refrain myself from any comparisons to Mathieu van der Poel, but he is very, very skilled, and Namur should be a good course for him. But honestly, what isn't a good course for him? People thought he couldn't ride sand. Well, in Kokzijde last year, he was arguably stronger than Laurens Sveek in the skill sand sections. He was good in Diegem, which was a fast course. He was up here in Namur. I think that even if Nice and Mason show up at their best, Del Grosso will be a contender. I think he will have become a bit stronger from racing what he did this season on the road. He did a bigger road campaign. He is building into his cross season now. I do think he will be up there. And honestly, I think that it's only a matter of time before we're gonna see, like, at some point some worries, like, oh, if we look at the top 5 of this race, Van der Poel, Nieuwenhuis, Ronhaar, Van der Haar, Del Grosso, Ryan Kamp in good form, Mace Hendricks, like, the Dutch definitely have something going for them at the moment, and with Del Grosso, it's just another tool added to the toolbox of the national coach Gerben de Knecht come the championship. So my expectations for Del Grosso are definitely high, and I would agree with your assessment, Issam. He comes in here first, so we don't really know where he will be exactly. Like, maybe things are slightly off, he's a bit rusty, maybe he needs a bit more time to grow in for him too, like he won't be lining up all the way at the front, but I am quite optimistic that we'll see a strong Del Grosso who will finish in the top 5 and will make a play. I think I should mention 2 more riders. Ronhaar may be an outsider, this could be a good course for him if his back holds, and yeah, then there's Toon Aerts, and we've been mentioning a number of times that Toon Aerts had been sick after the European Championships. He only posted today, well, not just only, he posted today is what I want to say, that directly after the European Championships his partner had a miscarriage, and that took a big toll on him, understandably so. There's people have concluded that he then wasn't sick and that it's more of a mental thing. I would kind of understand why you reasoned that way, but those things aren't mutually exclusive. He could have been sick and this could still have happened at that point. So it's definitely a very, very sad situation for him and his partner. And from here, sitting just in my room and whatever, like, it won't reach him, but I wish him well, and it makes a lot of sense that can take a heavy impact on your season. So that's why I don't really have too high expectations for him, but it would also be great if he's able to turn it around and get things going again. He definitely seemed to have that intention reading his Instagram post.
Hopefully they are able to deal well with the loss, and for sure it must have had an impact. So yeah, that's life is sometimes quite tough, and hopefully he can bounce back and look forward, but that's so easy to say and meaningless coming from my end. But it's I read it and it just sucks. It just sucks, and it's hopefully they're able to deal with it, and hopefully he can turn it into something positive, as as bad as it is, and it's just tough. So from where I'm sitting, I hope that they get through it well, and I wish them all the best. And there's not really much more I or we, to be honest, can do.
No, I think as how sharp the contrast might be, we're going to continue our preview and talk about the women's side now, because also there Alpecin is sending, if they have their Dutch sons going to the men's side, they also have their Dutch daughter coming in on the women's side in the person of Puck Pieterse. We'll kick it off doing the same way. I will go over the entirety of Noah's 9 because I do place the riders in there in advance, just taking a guess, throwing a blinder, a dagger, a Hail Mary, and let's take it away with Noah's 9.
Catch the heat!
Noah's 9. Yes, we have some movements because there are new people on the list, and we have some performance movements. Dropping to the 9th place on this list is Leonie Bentveld. This is mainly because I feel there are stronger riders entering the field at the moment. Bentveld has had a good season, but so have many other riders, because in 8th place we find Amandine Foucounet. She beat Bentveld in Flamanville. That's doing a lot of heavy lifting for her. She's shown that form. Namur is a course where in the past she has performed quite well. Christmas period, definitely a few good races for Foucounet. Still in the hunt for a contract. Hopefully that works out. 8th place for Foucounet, therefore. In 7th place, Sena del Carmen Alvarado, dropping a few places on this list from 5 to 7. She has been sick, and we have a few movements, because in 6th place now is Shirin van Anrooy, demonstrating good form with her podium place in Terrabla. I had to move her up, therefore she's not racing this weekend because she is in Spain training. She will come back for Antwerp. I've seen encouraging signs so far, so that's why she moves up at the expense of Alvarado, who, if fit, can definitely regain some positions. In 5th place right now, we find Puck Pieterse. I am very cautious. Yeah, I already know Issam is going to have some comments about this in a little bit, because probably in my prediction I will also put Pieterse higher. But yeah, it's the first time, so I'm just being a bit cautious. In 5th place, first race of the season for her too. She'll probably be a bit rusty, and that end of the mountain bike and road season, for me, it's definitely something that I'm keeping back here in my head, thinking like, ooh, how she recovered from that. I think it's very positive that there was a longer rest period, but for now, 5th place. That is behind Inge van der Heijden, 4th place. She moves down, not really due to any wrongdoing of her own. She was in training camp in Spain, so she just loses out because I move Aniek van Alphen up to 3rd place. Van Alphen, winner in Flamanville, 2nd place, leader of the World Cup. I have to keep her up in the rankings. Moves up a place, but very evenly matched with van der Heijden this season. In 2nd place, no movement, Sarah Casasola, bad day in Terrabla. I will see that through the fingers for now and keep her in 2nd place. Behind, who else? Lucinda Brandt, 9 wins, 11 races. This stat keeps going. We're nearing 2 years since the last time she was off the podium in Benidorm. Absolutely insane. She disclosed more after the race than what we already knew. She was emotional. She said something about her home situation in the flash interview. It turns out her mother passed away, and that she therefore dedicated the win to her, and was kind of in doubt if she should go to Sardinia or not to race. Also a difficult situation for her, but she remains on top of my list for now. Also, in my opinion, Issam the favorite to win here in Namur. We've seen her do very well on this course historically. Pieterse, it's maybe the course that comes closest to mountain biking, but not really a place where we've seen her pose a monumental challenge. I still have the question, where is Fem van Empel? Like, please, I've been waiting, and in October I was
something.
here. Oh yeah, first straight head-to-head with Brand van Empel, and it's still not here, and I'm just frustrated. Like, Visma Lisa bike, like, put out a communique, tell us when she's coming back, tell us what's the deal. Like, you can't just act like it's normal, like, oh, a 2-month train, or a month and a half training camp. I shouldn't exaggerate things, but like, it was like, oh, she was sick and then training. Like, sure, maybe she is training all the time, maybe she felt her form wasn't good enough early in the season, and that's fine, or whatever reason she has, I don't care. It's up to her to plan her season, totally fine. I just want to know, where is Fem van Empel? Where is the world champion? What is she up to? Is she with a road training camp right now? And is she enjoying some team building there, some time with her teammates? Is she going to hit the ground running? Are there any further setbacks? I just want to get a gauge. And I think with now Pieterse back, we're certainly going to get a good battle here. Alvarado, a rider who's won here. It's maybe not the course you would necessarily associate with her. But yeah, interestingly enough, they are not up there, but yeah, Casasola, who I do associate this course with, hasn't had the best results here in the past, and not definitely a good course for Van der Heijden. Van Alphen, I've seen it a number of times. She doesn't have what it takes to challenge Brandt at the moment. I don't see that change suddenly now. So yeah, if I had to place you top 4, it's clearly Brandt, and then my outsiders, Pieterse, Alvarado, and Casasola.
I think I have to act disappointed now and about Pieterse because I think she will do quite well, and I think you do think that as well. But I think she could actually be playing a bigger role for a podium. It depends a little bit on how she will be, because of course we cannot really remove that from our sides, the sort of kind of complete deflation of form that we saw at the end of her mountain bike campaign, and that, you know, you just don't know how someone will get through that. But I think with the time that she took off and you know, how she built up again a little bit, I think that should be fine, and she should normally just be able. I would be disappointed, let's just put it that way, I would be disappointed if she's not within the top 5. So I think that if you expect, you know, a minimum of 5th, I think I can live with that. But I feel, to be honest, that if she's on a good day and she has good form and it's all going her way somewhat, then I feel that she will play for the podium. And I have to say that it's gonna be dry, so that's obviously it. I don't know actually in whose favor that will play, but I feel that Van Alphen, if she has a good day, could definitely challenge Brandt maybe a little bit more. But it's definitely difficult to say, because I feel like if it's raining more, but you can jump in here. If it's raining more, I feel like it would play more in the cards of a Brandt, because it would just need more power output. It would just be a bit more tougher, and she can make the difference then a little bit more. But maybe because then it's going to be dry or dry-ish, then it could maybe play more in the cards of a Van Alphen. Maybe not so much into Pieterse's abilities, because I think that she would have then definitely benefited a bit more from a course that's just all muddy and slippery and all that. But I think that for Van Alphen, she could actually play a bigger role if, and that's a big if her form is good and she has the legs.
See, so Namur is a bit of a tricky course, Issam, because when it gets wet, what really becomes harder in this course? The climbing here is quite straightforward. You have that cobbled climb, and you have the climb after the start, which is gravelish. What becomes harder? The short climb after the U-turn with the sandbag in there, where you go from the road to the climb and you need this power burst. This climb before you come to the short off-camber, which is new, where they used to have the stairs downhill that one year, and then the section directly after the off-camber. So overall, I would say that mostly the technical downhill becomes more difficult, and that would probably benefit Van Alphen more. But ex aequo, I think, in terms of the general, like, dry versus wet, I think probably it would benefit Van Alphen and Brandt each and other sections of the course. So actually, yeah, Brandt probably would have the upper hand, knowing her reckless downhill skills. So yeah, maybe Brandt, I would give her the upper hand there. But it's going to be dry. Maybe does that suit Van Alphen then a bit more? Perhaps it does. But like I said, I'm not looking too much into her for the battle. About Pieterse, top 5, very cautious. This is more like a general expectations. Pieterse is not a great sand rider. There are some sand races coming up. I'm just covering for myself here at this point, because I should have probably put her higher. I think looking at last year, she finished on the podium here in her first race of the season. She finished in the podium for, I believe, the first race of the season for a number of years in a row. I guess what I'm just kind of stuck with in my head, which made me put her where I did, is just this kind of vision I have. Okay, there's a number of crashes, there's a number of problems, a number of hiccups, but it's maybe also not fully fair, because for the last 2 years she tried to like grow into the season, and illness around the national / Benidorm / world championships. The week before Tibor she got sick. Last year she skipped Benidorm with illness. Like, that then doesn't help to build your peak, and we can't put a quantity on form loss due to that. So we will need to see how it goes. Hopefully she has a fit season. Hopefully she comes in stronger and more rested. And yeah, perhaps we will then see what we saw 3 years ago already, when she was able to fight with Van Empel on the courses that suited her best. So I do think Pieterse will finish on the podium here. I would not even be surprised if it's second. Alvarado coming back from illness. Hard to say where she will be. Hard to say if she'll even start at this point. I mean, how many times have we seen that she'll come back from illness and then on Friday communicate, yeah, not starting. So it will be interesting to follow and see how that goes. And again, Casasola, yeah, she's up there, but I've also have my own reasons to doubt, not just Terrabla, but in previous years it wasn't that great necessarily here in Namur. Last year it was the start of this phase where things didn't at all go her way. She had some big major illness and it just didn't work out. A year before she got that podium at the European Championships, then she came to Namur and we were thinking, oh yeah, this will be another race where she can go for the podium. It wasn't necessarily a bad race, she was 4th, but she was 2 minutes 15 off the podium. So place that in perspective, right? Like, it's definitely possible for Casasola, especially looking at the start list, but it won't be easy, and I'm curious what you think about that, Issam.
I see what you mean, but it is tricky, because I feel like, you know, if you look at the course itself, you would definitely say like, okay, this is a course that normally she should be able to, you know, find her way and get through it quite well, and you know, fight for a good result. But it just hasn't been going her way, and I think that definitely there is somewhat where where the fear lays is that you're kind of just thinking like, oh, it could be again that she will not really find her way somewhere throughout the race, halfway or something, and she makes a mistake, makes another one, and she loses, by just in 2 laps or something, she loses a minute, and the race is done. So I don't personally think that exact scenario will play, but I can definitely see that that there are just some sections on the course where she could make a mistake left or right, and it just doesn't really help her case in terms of trying to have a very good result. And I can definitely understand that we have that question mark, or at least I feel that I have a question mark on what she would be able to do there. And I think one thing that we definitely have to mention as well is that Namur is in a way also a somewhat honest course. If you have good form, it will show. If you don't have good form, it will also show, and you will have a terrible day, and you will hate your life, and it will not be great. So I think that will also be, it will be a good indication, I guess. You cannot go completely off this race, but I feel that you can definitely go off this race in the sense that you know that if someone is doing good here, they will also be there at the beginning of the Christmas period, most likely. And so that is kind of where I'm at with Casasola. I feel that she is definitely someone that has the ability to fight up front on such a course, but we don't have enough evidence for that. That it's just lacking. I cannot really make a very profound case for that. So I have to I have to leave it at that and not really commit to anything, to an outrageous statement in a way. So I think that is where I'm at. I just feel that she has to prove it once. She has done it in the past, but I feel that she has to do that again, and Namur would be a great course because the track record is not all too great.
Some of those question marks will certainly be answered this weekend. No outrageous statements from us, always only the most serious predictions. Issam, thank you for your time.
Absolutely, no worries.
And we will now move over to our preview for the American National Championships. They are taking place in Fayetteville, Arkansas, the first of a 2-year contract. And with me here to take a look ahead at the elite racing is our American correspondent, Patrick. Thank you for being here.
Hey, Noah, happy to be back. It's been a while.
It's good to have you back on. I know you've been following all the racing very closely. Last year, Louisville, and now we get Fayetteville. Are you excited for your trip out to Arkansas?
We've seen a bunch of races in Fayetteville, but I've never had a chance to go out there. So it'll be interesting to see the track. It's going to be not too cold. It's going to be bone dry, so it'll create some interesting racing, I think.
About that course, then, I heard the big climb has been taken out. What is your take on that?
Yeah, that's the rumor, and it seems like it's going to come true. So I don't know. I think that's kind of a decisive part of the course. It is probably the thing that can create big differences. So getting rid of that's a little upsetting, but we'll see how it plays out. These courses never quite do what you expect them to do. Louisville was a good example of that. So we'll see what happens this week in Fayetteville.
I think it's for sure a shame that climb is out for the elite races. I can very much see the difficulty for a nationals course because it needs to accommodate in the US also the Masters and the 15-16s, whereas in Europe these youth categories and the Masters have a separate standalone event. So those courses there will be different than the elite, and it becomes difficult because you need to find a good balance. The under 10 or even the 15-16s, that's kind of the max that I would send up that climb. It's really steep, and you certainly don't want these super young riders needing to walk up that climb. So it's a bit of a shame because definitely for the elite racing, but also for developmental purposes, it could be very beneficial for definitely the juniors and arguably the 15-16s as well to have that climb and have that semi-technical descent. And it's the one place where you can really make a difference there. But without that, the course might be a bit different. We could see perhaps even more group racing. Of course, we remember from the World Cup and World Championships when it was fast, it's hard to break away there. The men elite, let's start there. Andrew Strohmeyer isn't racing. He's staying in Europe. The Pan American champion wouldn't be able to wear the jersey. He will be taking the start in Namur on the day of the national championship. Does that leave Eric Brunner as really the only contender for the title?
I think it does. You look at the start list here, and really without Strohmeyer there, Bruner's really the top favorite, and it'll be surprising if we see it closer than a minute or two here. I think Bruner runs away pretty quick with this one.
The course also suits him. This is where he, after all, got his all-time World Cup best finish, fourth, a number of years ago. And yeah, it's hard to really see anybody else take it, but maybe then if we already kind of take a look ahead of these national championships, do you think that we could see Brunner put in similar performances to Strohmeyer in Europe? Because historically Strohmeyer has been slightly better in Europe than Brunner.
I think this situation in Fayetteville kind of plays in Bruner's favor on a good year anyway. With Strohmeyer there, it might have been a good race. Bruner tends to do better in the drier conditions. His position on the bike is more, I'd say, aerodynamic. It kind of favors a Fayetteville type course. So when you switch over to the European racing, where things are less fast, there's more mud, there's more technical features. I think that's when you start seeing a difference between the two. And in the past few years, we've seen kind of Strohmeyer and Brunner switch, right? One will be ahead of the other, and then they'll kind of switch around. But I think this year, Strohmeyer probably is the stronger rider. Brunner might make some performances depending on conditions in Europe, but I think this course in Fayetteville really favors him, and that's part of the reason why the race is likely to turn out the way it will.
Strohmeyer not there. What do you think about that decision?
I think the decision makes sense, right? You can't wear the jersey, so there's not much motivation in a jersey. Is there a good point in leaving Europe, coming back for one race, and then going back to Europe? Probably not if you don't necessarily care about a national championship in that way. So I think staying in Europe makes sense from a development perspective. Get some good races against competition there. I think that is a more logical approach to the season, and it kind of takes out a little bit of the travel that'll give you fatigue and potentially hurt your form.
I would agree. In the previous episode, Issam and I spoke about the 6 seasons of cyclocross, and kind of what we spoke about is how Europeans build their season. So you have September, that's just for shenanigans and it doesn't really matter. October is for getting into form until the European Championships. November is either people who peaked for the European Championships burning down and going to Spain, or people who really build towards those European Championships prolonging their form. December is first a big block of training, then the Christmas period, which carries on halfway through January to the national championships. Then you get the World Championship phase, training in Spain, recuperating, double World Cup weekend, and then you hit the World Championships, and then the 6 month is February, which nobody cares about again. But pretty much the European season build is very similar for all riders, but not for the US riders, because the September month, which nobody really cares about in Europe, is very important in the US. There's selection races, there's the USCX series, so the season build immediately becomes different. Similarly, the national championship date also doesn't allow for this big block of training in the Spanish sun, or in any sunny place for that matter, which the Europeans are doing. So if you really want to succeed in Europe, probably doing what Strohmeyer is doing, and also Lydia Cusack, who we'll talk about in a bit, is your best bet. Then I'm curious how you're looking in general at the landscape here on the men's side. Last year, Scott Funston put in a big challenge. He eventually finished on the podium but couldn't quite make it stick. Curtis White was also still there. Those two have now retired. White fully, Funston semi. He's done a few races this season, but he's prioritized his job. How are you looking at the top of the men elite category right now?
I think the men elite category is kind of starting to dwindle, right? We've seen this happening slowly over time, and it's kind of hitting a peak, and you're seeing a top two rider in Strohmeyer and Brunner, and then kind of a drop off there to the second tier. We have a lot of riders in the U23 level that are going to be coming up in the next few years, so we're probably going to repopulate that elite level. But for this season, maybe next season, and potentially, but not likely, and the third season after that, it's going to be a little light at the elite level.
Who would you say are the biggest outsiders? Like, let's say Brunner has a bad day, or something doesn't go his way, or somebody else overperforms. Who are you looking at other contenders for the win, or for that matter, the podium?
I think your three riders, you have Sippy coming up as a U23, not really a cross racer, but we saw last year he performed well at the U23 level. So I think that'll be interesting to see the mountain bikers kind of jump into cross. Jules Van Kempen will have a good run at it. Kerry Werner, longtime racer, he's come in and out in the last few years. He's been racing kind of a full program domestically, so I think he's a podium contender. Three people for four spots. I think that's probably your best guess.
I would say that probably based on how the season went, Jules van Kempen and Kerry Werner would be the ones. Like you say, Ivan Sippy is a good shot. Other people I would keep an eye on are Marcus Shelton. He's a very powerful rider. We saw him do quite well last year early on, but then he burnt out and decided to focus on the road. He's been going quite strong, so based on that in the past and also his limited appearances this year, I think he could be a rider to keep in mind. And then Dylan Sekrizek also moving up from the U23 category. He's had a few good outings this year. It's been a bit tricky with a collarbone fracture, but he hasn't been racing as much lately, so he's had the opportunity to train up a bit, and maybe that gives him the bit of freshness that he needs at this point in the season. So those would probably be it, and I'll let you go first for your top three prediction, Patrick.
I'm gonna go Bruner, obviously, Van Keppen, then Kerry Werner.
I will also follow you in putting Brunner on one, but for second place, I will then go with Marcus Shelton, and third place going to Jules van Kempen, the half-touch rider. Let's move to the women's side then, because there, again, a championship marked by absentees. Last year's national champion, Vida Lopez de San Roman, isn't making the trip over. She will start her cyclocross season soon. I am not sure if that soon is Namur or a week later, but she will be hitting the cross scene. Last year's runner-up, Katie Klaus, has retired from cyclocross. That would perhaps make you think that Raylan Nuss is now the favorite, but the best performing rider in Europe has been Lydia Cusack. However, the CXD rider has decided to stay in Europe as well. She told me in Flamanville that there wasn't really much to gain for her coming back, just more chances to get sick, less opportunity to train, less opportunity to learn. She said the course really was like the final straw that made her stay in Europe. And she was like, I'll learn more from racing Namur than spending 4 days racing around Fayetteville. So without her, is that then Nuss? I personally see more in Lizzie Gonzalez, the defending or the reigning Pan American champion, and Alyssa Sarkisov, another U23, who's also shown quite some potential already.
I think that the two that you just named, Alyssa Sarkisov, Lizzie Gonzalez, those are probably your two riders here that are most likely to perform well on the day. Um, not not a terribly deep field here with Cusack and Vita not showing up for this race. And the reasons for not doing so make a lot of sense. And it's much the same as Strohmeyer. There's limited reason to fly back to the States for this race, and there's a lot more to gain in Europe. So those decisions make a lot of sense, but it leaves the field relatively thin here on the women's side. And I think it's going to turn out very similar to last year's race, but we're going to swap out Vita and Katie Klaus for Lizzie Gonzalez and Alyssa Sarkisov.
I would agree. Gonzalez has had a very good season this year. I, well, thought last year in the US it was kind of a underperformance. She's typically been slightly better on the European courses, but even then, this year it was beyond my expectations. She has, from her first races all the way until the Pan American Championship, she only lost once, and that was in Northampton to Sydney McGill. So it's been a strong outing. She is, at least appears to be, to me, a more powerful rider this year, and combining that with her skill, it really becomes hard to see Sarkisov beat her. Sarkisov hasn't raced nearly as much this year. They haven't faced each other. Sarkisov started her season at the Pan American Championships, where she raced in the women's U23 category. And maybe I should be more specific, Alyssa Sarkisov in this case is who I'm talking about. She is a first-year U23. She's raced twice this season. She was second in Washington, D.C. at the Pan American Championships, fourth a day later in the woman elite race there. So I think she will be coming in quite fresh. I've seen her potential before, especially on a fast course like this. It's really hard to drop her. She has real grinta. She's eager to stick in the wheel. But I think actually her older sister, Catherine Sarkisov, could be another contender for the podium here, together with Lauren Zerner. Zerner was quite good in North Carolina. And Catherine Sarkisov, at the meantime, was in Europe. And her performance in Flamanville, where she finished 20th, was quite good.
That's your kind of second tier that's going to be fighting here for the podium. So any surprises happen, any mechanicals, any crashes, and everything I just said you can throw up in the air and a different result could happen. But those are kind of probably the 4 or 5 people that have an opportunity to make the podium. So again, the men's side's probably 4 or 5 riders fighting for 3 spots. The women's side's probably the same. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But the years of pre-COVID where there was deep fields on both sides, those are kind of gone. And right now we're seeing not a lot of depth at the elite level. But again, women's side is very much the same. There's a lot of riders at the U23 level that can come up in the next few years. And if we see riders come back from Europe for nationals, I mean, the whole story changes and we could have 10 possible contenders. So it's interesting to see where US Cross is. There's a lot of high performing riders that are not necessarily racing the domestic races, but that can change at a moment's notice. So in the next few years, we'll see what happens with US Cross and whether or not a European priority continues, or if we start seeing a split between domestic and European. There's a lot of riders out there, and the depth or lack thereof right now can change very quickly.
One dynamic I think we're seeing in that is that there is talent. The question is, will they be preserved for cyclocross? But without getting into that discussion again, what I have kind of observed is that you see a number of these riders who are really moving their way up, especially here on the women's side. They are not your typical US mountain bike cross rider. Like, take, for instance, McKenna Kellerman. She's a mountain biker, and she will be lining up in the U23 category, racing for Steve Tilford Foundation. But she's been surpassed by first-year U23s, Lydia Cusack, Alyssa Sarkisov, but also Lizzie Gonzalez. She's made big strides forward this season, and that is, I think, not for the least down to her extensive road campaign. All of these riders are active on the road and building a lot of volume through that, and Cusack, I mean, she's not here, but honestly, on this course, it would be quite hard to bet against her. It's powerful course, it's a fast course. That is not the type of course that typically would suit Vida Lopez de San Roman if she was there. Cusack has made really good steps forward. Like that performance in Flamanville, if she didn't flat right after the second pit at the end of the first lap, she could have been looking at an 11th or 10th place in the results as a first year U23 nevertheless. So I think she's made really big steps forward. She's going to be joining a European road/cross team on January 1st as well. So I think there's definitely some movement there, and you can see that the riders who are perhaps more on the road take their benefits from that, as we've seen some European riders do as well, because there you typically see as well that the road cross riders make more progression than the mountain bike cross riders throughout their U23 years.
It's an interesting difference in North America versus in Europe, I think, Noah, because in North America, we see a lot of mountain bikers and we see a lot of road riders that then race cross in the winter, but that's not necessarily their first, top discipline. In Europe, it's kind of the other way around. We see a lot of cross-specific riders, especially on the men's side, that then support their cross campaign with road training in the summer, with a little light mountain biking here and there, but they're very much cross-specific riders, which I don't know, outside of maybe Brunner, if there's a cross-specific rider in this field that we're talking about today.
I guess there are some, like Lauren Zerner, for instance, but it's difficult and harder outside of Belgium to be a cross-specific rider because the number of cross-specific teams are going extinct. Like Jurgen Mettepenningen keeps standing on every fence to shout that there's a future for cross-specific teams, but I think it's very hard because you're going to see more and more that road teams have realized that the power that the cross-Pacific guys put out is also translating into road results, and therefore road teams pick them up, and then if you're lucky, and hopefully the Olympics will change that from lucky to being the standard, then you'll be allowed to race cross for them. So with that, I think it makes sense that the most powerful riders are drawn by other disciplines, especially outside of Belgium. And it's tricky, therefore, because it's harder, I guess, in other countries to, as a cross-Pacific rider, have the access to their road. But definitely, in my philosophy, the road-cross combination is the most successful for cross because it really builds your volume. Only if you have access to a mountain bike program, which also has that bigger training, it would be a similar situation. But then a final question, because we've discussed the elite races here, but we also have the U23 races, and for some reason they are the prime events on Saturday. I don't know what they did with the schedule this year, but it is what it is. And perhaps some of the biggest contenders are racing those standalone races. In the U23 men's race, we see, for instance, Henry Koot taking the start. He will want to defend his title. He broke his spine in Val di Sole on the mountain bike, started his season in Northampton, won the Pan American title U23, but then didn't really have a great weekend in Boulder. We are similarly seeing that on the women's side, Kaya Musgrave and McKenna Kellerman are racing the U23 race, and they could potentially have been podium contenders as well in the elite race. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Well, let's talk about the women's side first. So I think the women's side, both these riders might be prioritizing getting a jersey. And so going down the U23 path might be the most likely way to get a jersey, which makes sense. Once you get that, then your focus can shift and you can go chase after other things and race the elite next year. On the men's U23 side, I think at the beginning of the year, you pick Koot to win the elite level national championship. And if the injury didn't happen at Val di Sole, I think there's a likelihood that would have been pursued. I just, with the form and with the injury, the season didn't come together the way Henry's probably looking for it. So we'll see him back, defending a U23 jersey national championship. But it's going to be interesting. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier, that we're going to be seeing a lot of riders, both on the women's and the men's side at the U23 level, moving up to elite. And the depth of the field will immediately get deeper, which is only good for the American cross scene and should help it stabilize more in the next few years.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick. And I think with that, we are also touching upon the last dynamic there, and that is that a lot of these riders have been out of competition for quite a while. The spacing of the season is a bit weird, especially for European, where you're used to getting into a race rhythm, but many haven't raced since Boulder, North Carolina, 3-4 weeks ago. Some haven't raced since Pan American Championships, that's 6 weeks ago. So that makes the unpredictability of this weekend a bit higher, because who knows? I mean, you're putting in the work on the training, but can you execute coming in kind of cold? How good are your skills? How much will you even need your skills here in Fayetteville? So that will be an interesting dynamic to follow, racing on Saturday and Sunday. So hopefully some good, entertaining racing nevertheless. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Yeah, thanks, Noah. And before I hang up with you, hey, I have two shout outs to Escondido, California locals. I'm calling from Escondido. I got in U23, McKenna Kellerman, and then in Elite Men, Brody McDonald. I've actually ridden with Brody a few times. I don't think he knows who I am, but that's okay. He smoked me. I saw him for the first 5 minutes of the ride and then never saw him again. So good luck to both those two.
And we should not forget to do a prediction for the women's race. And I think I get to go first, and I will go with Sarkisov, Alyssa Sarkisov 1, Lizzie Gonzalez 2, and Kat Sarkisov 3rd.
I will switch your top two. I'll go Lizzie Gonzalez first, Alyssa Sarkisov second, and then, oh man, third's tough. Lauren Zerner.
I know Lauren is a loyal listener to this podcast, so hopefully she will be pleased, and probably not as pleased with my prediction, but at least I put Jules on the podium. So, good. Thank you again, Patrick. And now we will replace you with Issam to head into the European scene and discuss who has been moving up our mountain ahead of the return of Van der Poel and Del Grosso.
Great. Thanks, Noah. It was fun.
Thank you to Patrick, and that will round up this episode of the Cyclocross Social podcast. This weekend we will be back with an episode about the World Cup in Namur. We are not covering the Exactcross in Kortrijk due to the sad start list, and instead we will be treating you to probably another special episode with Patrick, who will be on the ground reporting for us from the American National Championships in Fayetteville. Thanks, see you guys then, goodbye.